We were not made for boredom. We were made for wonder. And when people say they're getting old or they're older, I think what they're actually saying is, I've lost the wonder. This is life. And they look at the graph of life as a declining line. Like, oh, I've lived all this. And again, I reject that assumption. To your point from the beginning, I've got more time, I have more resources, I have more wisdom. I look at life as an increasing line. And the wonder, I'm not made for boredom. I was made for wonder and mystery and what's out there. And sure, I'll try that. We were not made for boredom. We were made for wonder. And that's the life that I want to live.
Welcome to the Age of Lions podcast, a platform and community dedicated to bringing purpose, strategy, and calling to kingdom-minded people who are 50 plus and excited about their next chapter. Here's your host, Mark Clement.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode number 3 of the Age of Lions podcast. You just heard a little clip from our guest today. That's Gina Cox. So excited to have Gina on the podcast. Gina is an attorney. She is a theologian, has her master's in theology. She's an incredible teacher. She and I served together at Highlands College here in Birmingham for several years together. She was leading our whole college through the accreditation process and did it in record time. And I've learned so much from her. She's become a really dear friend of my wife and mine, and we love her. And I tell you, no one has come to be a part of this podcast who was more researched and more prepared than Gina Cox, and that's who she is. She has stats. She has information from other research institutes. She has her personal experience. She has her philosophy on what's happening. And we talk about aging as part of the body of Christ and what that looks like in the local church. We talk about friend groups, and she's just got some values and some pillars that she's going to share. So I'm so excited for you to learn from her. I learned a ton from this episode. So let's dive in with our interview with Gina Cox. Well, hey everybody, welcome back to an episode of Age of Lions. We're so excited today to have a really special guest. This is a dear friend of Gina and mine's, Gina Cox. And Gina and I used to work together, and she's just one of my favorite people. Gina, how are you today?
I'm awesome. How are you, Mark?
I am great. I appreciate you fitting us in between all of your travel and fun and leisure and service and all the things you're doing.
Thank you. I'm just happy to get a chance to have a good visit with you.
Well, we're going to have fun for sure. Gina and I were talking before we started recording, and I was looking for some really strong leader women who can speak to this topic with authority. And Gina does one thing well. She speaks with authority on anything she talks about. Like I was telling you guys up front, she's an attorney by trade. And then we had the privilege of serving at Highlands College together for a few years. And she led our accreditation process, and she just gets stuff done. And she left well and went into this new season of life. Is one of the reasons I wanted to talk to her today and have you guys hear from her. So we'll kind of get into those processes, but I ask everybody up front, the first thing we talk about is, at what age would you say you kind of had the realization that you're kind of moving into the older category? You know, I'm not 35 anymore. I'm not, some people give us kind of funny anecdotes. Some people it's something serious, maybe some transition in your life or an illness or whatever. But anyway, what was that moment for you where you kind of thought, I'm not as young as I like to think I am?
Maybe I'm delayed, but I haven't had that moment.
Oh, good. Good for you.
Yeah. I really thought about that question, and I just think it's all a matter of perspective. My mother, we have good genes. We, don't age as many people do. I mean, we
Sure.
age, but you don't understand what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And my mother looked very youthful, well into her 80s. And she used to say, I go to the grocery store and I see these old ladies and they're walking along. And she's like, oh my gosh, they must be 110. I'm 85. What are they? And so I kind of have that mindset of, I'm not old.
Right.
In fact, there are times when I still feel like a 15-year-old girl.
Sure.
So I don't, and I'm very thankful also, genetically, and some personal decisions, healthy, active. I mean, I reject the assumption
Right.
that there's a phase that, oh, now I'm old.
Oh, I agree with that for sure.
Or that, oh, I'm not a spring chicken anymore. I just don't think that way.
You just refuse to partner with it.
Yeah, exactly. I just reject the assumption entirely.
Okay, well, that's great. Good for you. So talk about, you said you've made some good choices. You've got good genes, but also you made good choices. Talk a little bit about that. What have you done to help support that mindset? Physical things you've done, exercise, eating. What do you do that helps you feel good?
Yeah, so that's a great question, because again, I think everything we do in life is a combination of mindset and model, right?
That's good.
What's your model? What's your mindset? Who's your model, right? And who's impacting your mindset? So, again, my parents were, I have to, underlying assumption, genetically very blessed, very healthy parents, no age-related decline. And my father lived until he was 90. The last time I saw him, he was driving by himself out of my driveway in Alabama to drive home to Maryland, 13 hours. And there wasn't a single human that was slightly worried about this 90-year-old driving to Maryland.
Right.
Just wasn't a thing. So baseline, I understand what I've been given. But secondarily, then I have to have a mindset about it. And I got into some unhealthy habits in work, as we all do. And I'm a very passionate person. If I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it well. I'm competitive, but it's not even as better than someone else. It's as well as it can be done.
Yeah.
Within reasonable human ability. If I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it that way. So I got into some really unhealthy habits, and some numerical, blood work, such indicators were off, and weight was up, and et cetera. So I had a doctor once who is my hero to this day. And instead of prescribing me a bunch of pills, she handed me the card of a nutritionist. Now, this was about 4 years ago, and that has completely changed my life.
Wow.
And subsequently, I have learned that many, many insurance companies now cover nutrition input from licensed dietitians.
Yeah.
And that just changed my mindset about food and about exercise. And so, now for a woman of my age, I'm 63, I'll be 64 in September, high protein, weight-bearing exercise, not the heavy hitting, cardio that we used to think was a thing to do. In every season of life, you're asking the same questions, but the answer may be different. So, I was asking myself at a certain point, how can I live a healthy, beautiful, rich, interesting, amazing life? Well, part of that would be exercise. So maybe 15 years ago, I was doing CrossFit. Well, I'm not doing CrossFit now. I'm doing Pilates, right? Same question, different answer.
Yeah.
And so through a combination of diet and exercise and just being super intentional about that. And when I say diet, I don't mean like calorie restriction. I mean just knowing what's going into my body, being intentional about it. I mean, here's a little example, but one is that, in Birmingham, Alabama, where we are, there's a high metal content in the ground. So therefore, our water has a high metal content. I got a water filter. I got a Culligan, the good old-fashioned Culligan. The Culligan man comes to my house because I just want to make some healthy choices like that. So, personally, that's one big area that I think has contributed to my mindset. But while I was on this, like I like to call it my health journey, because I really use the word diet and everybody's like, oh, Weight Watchers,
sure,
whatever, the Wegovy or any of that stuff, I was looking for a sustainable way to live because, 30 years ago, I was 33. I had just had 3 children. I've lived a whole lot of life in the last 30 years. Well, I've got another 30 years in me.
Right.
So what can I do to live that out long and healthy? And in the middle of this journey, I came across a book called The Blue Zones. Have you heard of the Blue Zones research?
I have. Yeah.
And so, of course, read Dan Buettner's book, but I'm laughing because I looked through it before in preparation. Longevity hacks, like we used to like the word, we like the word hacks now. Activity, natural movement. Like, my mother and father lived very healthy. My mother cooked every day, went to the grocery store every day, fresh, wonderful, good food. My father gardened, and I don't mean like little annuals. I mean trimming trees. I mean, moving bushes, laying sod, well into his 80s.
Wow.
Natural movement. Outlook, right? How do you think about things? What are your daily routines? I put some daily routines, whether it be prayer or reading or, and I'll tell you about those daily routines, kind of the structure for them in a minute. Diet and exercise, we've already talked about that. And then this is the big one. So if you read any of his stuff, connection and community. And it's that staying connected to family and friends. And if you feel disconnected, if you're like, well, my family doesn't talk to me and I don't have any friends, well, go do it, right?
Yeah.
Go make some friends. Go get out and get involved and find some people. And I've done that too, because I've gone through a phase. I've moved to a new neighborhood. I've moved, how do I do that? So I think that when you say, how have I done that? It really is. I mean, I could be Dan Buettner's case study, right? And I don't even know if I'm saying his name right, but you understand. I could be, because I check all those. I either have done or am doing.
Yeah, the connection thing is big. We've talked about that with some other guests as well. Men especially really struggle with that. I think they're not as intentional about social. And I've seen in different people that I know that are older than me that aren't living what I would call the best life or the healthiest life, they tend to get very isolated. They don't leave the house. They don't go out anymore. They don't go to movies. They don't do anything. They just sort of get in their rut and they stay there. They start pulling out of church. They get very isolated. And you can, right. I think it's why when a lot of times, I know there's probably multiple factors here, but when a spouse dies, then the other spouse will die very quickly afterwards. Sometimes I think that's it too, because they were so dependent, maybe codependent, but they were so dependent on each other that that once the one's gone, they don't have anybody to talk to or do anything with. And yeah, I think that's a huge part of it.
Absolutely.
And I want to talk about that with you in a little bit as well because of your friend group. But what are some, talk about your routine. You said your daily routine. How does that play into your
Yeah, so, as you know, where we worked, there was a season where I would work 6 days a week. Yeah. And I had to force myself to not work on the 7th.
Yeah.
And oftentimes the 7th was Sunday. Well, since we were affiliated with the church, everybody else was working and calling me on Sunday.
Yeah.
Right. And so, I lost the battle of no business on text. Don't be texting me. Right. Because that, even if you choose to not respond immediately, it's still in your brain. It's already there.
You're thinking about it. Yeah.
It's already there. I can see it. So, some of the folks that we worked with had different strategies about phones and keeping it But I think the point of that is it was all consuming. And then we went to church where we worked. So really 7 days a week in my waking hours and probably a lot of my sleeping hours too, my mind was on that. And so when I retired, which I hate that word.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even know what that word, I should have gone, I love etymology. I need to look that up.
Yeah. Well, when you transitioned from working to doing something else.
When I left my last job.
Right.
I was like, I know myself and I need some structure. And so the way I found it was I really love Greig, Greig, out of England. And he started the 24/7 prayer movement. And his group has an app called Lectio 365.
Okay.
It's a prayer app, and I love it. It is, I can't commend it highly enough because it's a lot of non-American voices, which is wonderful. I like to hear, first of all, their British accents, but also the perspectives. And so I just was, engaging that app and their daily prayer guidance. And so I read a little bit more about the ministry, and their ministry has these 6 pillars. And that's what I grabbed. Mission, justice, hospitality, creativity, learning, and prayer.
Wow.
And so I set out, I went back in my journal and looked. I set out a structure. So for mission and justice, I'm going to do something mission and justice related 2 times a month. Minimum. Hospitality, minimum once a month. Creativity, daily. Learning, weekly. Prayer, daily. And that gave me I like to talk about like a skeleton that you put muscles and not bones are obviously there, muscles and things on. That was the skeleton. So then the next question is, okay, well, what does that look like? What am I doing mission and justice twice a month? What is hospitality? So that's really how I started the journey of transitioning into my, all-encompassing 24-hour, 7-day-a-week job that was on my mind. If I'm not doing it that many hours, to blank slate.
Right.
And I think, I've talked to some friends lately, and I think that depending on your career, you can really struggle with that. Like, for example, a surgeon. Someone else has made his schedule. Someone else has filled his book. He shows up, and of course, there's hours and hours of preparation, study, and research that he's doing. But then, if you've never grown the muscle of building out your calendar, and then your career, you retire.
Yeah.
You don't even know how to build out you had a job for 30 years that somebody gave you your calendar. And so I think that a structure like this is what really helped me, even though I've built calendars out regularly.
Sure.
I needed
these
elements to hang my hat on.
Yeah. No, totally. Because I think most jobs, especially if it's like an executive type job, even if it's not done to the level of a surgeon, there's still so many meetings and things that just happen to you that you don't get to pick, that you have to be at. So your calendar does sort of self evolve or self create, and so there's a lot of it that you can't control. Whoever you work for, their calendar always supersedes yours, so you have to schedule and fit into theirs and all the things that go with that. I know when I left the college and was trying to decide what to do next, I took several months and just didn't work and didn't do anything and really tried to process, did I want to get another job? Did I want to start my own thing? What was I going to do? And it's fun for a week or two. It's freeing for a week or two. And then you find I started slipping into, I can't self-diagnose depression, but I felt I wasn't doing great. It was like you're sort of drifting, even though I was happy and life was fine and nothing was wrong. But that purpose part of our life is so important. I think it's so important that we have something to do, a reason to live, something to look forward to.
Right.
I heard somebody say. I've actually heard several people say this. I don't know who it's to attribute it to originally, but. A lot of people will say like one big secret to happiness is just always having something to look forward to, whether it's a trip or an event of some type or people coming over to the house next week or like just something to be preparing for, something to be working on. It seems to be, we have a beach vacation coming up in a couple of weeks that we've been planning for several months, and it's like a marker out there that you're just sort of not living for, but you're working towards it, like that's going to be great. It's something going to have some extra family time and all the things. So I think having that really does.
Oh,
really does
absolutely.
help.
In fact, when I was looking at kind of this blue zone stuff again, and I found actually the National Institute on Aging had actually come alongside, some of Dan Buettner's research, and they report that having a purpose adds approximately 7 years to your life.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
How about
big.
that? Isn't that big? And
Yeah.
then there was another one like that. Oh, being in a multi-generational faith-based family can add 4 to 14 years to your life.
Wow.
I know. This is
That's so
National
good.
Institutes on Aging. So,
Yeah.
that's some pretty robust stuff, but absolutely. And I think that, in fact, I talk with my husband about this all the time because he's just so all in on his work and has been. He's, one of those rare few people who's had 2 jobs. Now, it used to just be one, but he's worked for the same, that's not true. Actually, he's worked for 3 law firms, but long term, but in the same field, the same thing. And I just told him, as you're thinking about retiring, you've got to really be strategizing what's going to fill your calendar.
Yeah.
Because even if it's just cooking a great meal, right? You've got to, like for me, like I said, the hospitality, the creativity, you've got to have those elements in your life. And realistically, probably other than mission and justice, I way exceed my benchmarks for learning and creativity, learning, and prayer,
Sure.
because I'm devouring all these things.
Yeah.
So you've got to learn to fill the space. You've got
Yeah.
to.
Yeah, and I love it. That national study is really interesting because I think there's some things like that we know to be true spiritually in Scripture,
Right.
and there's some things that talk about purpose and talk about what God's created us for and all of that. But it's always cool when the science comes along and supports what we already kind of knew.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's exciting. How has your faith journey changed as you've gotten older? What have you learned in it? How does it look different now than it did 10 years ago or 20 years ago? What's important to you now that wasn't important to you before? I know it's a lot of questions, but you get the idea. Like, how's your faith journey evolved as you've gotten older? What's important to you at this stage of life?
So that's a great, great question, because I could do 5 podcasts on that. So I'm going to try to self-edit
That's
on
fine.
the fly.
And we might have you come back and we might do a special, but
Yeah,
for now, give me a high level.
I will. The other part of my story is I did get my master's in divinity. So, when you talk about aging, I went to law school as a returning woman at the grand old age of 27. But I was already, out of sync with my classmates who had come straight out of college.
Sure.
But then I went to seminary when I was in my 50s. So, again, when you go all the way back to the very first question, I just reject that assumption entirely. And frankly, there's a moment when I realized, ooh, I'm old. Because if it made any sense, and if I had, in terms of, let me say it this way. If I had unlimited resources, I'd be working on a doctorate. Okay, but right now I don't have unlimited resources, and so for me to do that would mean it would need to be unto a purpose other than self-edification.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm currently not in a mode where I'm like in a hurry to go get another job that I need a PhD for. So, so backing up, the reason I say that is because with the theological training I had, I think that's caused me to explore in ways that I hadn't before. And I don't want to exclude people who say, well, this doesn't apply to me. I don't have any theological training. Because in this current moment we're in, everything's at our fingertips.
Yeah.
Right? Harvard and Princeton have free, online, open resource their classes, some of their classes. And of course, you can take an entire degree online. And then there's even a website which you can link if you want, biblicaltraining.org. They literally have the seminary classes I took that I paid for.
Right.
Online for free.
Yeah.
Like the exact ones. Like, that was my professor. I paid a whole lot of money for that.
Right.
Okay. So point being, it's not just, oh, well, she has that theological training, so she, had a basis for exploring. I just started asking, I had the mental capacity and emotional space to start asking some questions. And as a result of that, I started reading people outside of the tradition that I was in. And so how has my faith changed? It has changed fundamentally. I have, it's one of those where the more I know, the less I know.
Sure.
Right? And so I have a much more expansive, well, not universalist, I'm not saying that, an expansive understanding of what it means to be a Christ follower.
Yeah.
And there's a book that I've read that I really would commend. And it's funny that I'm sitting in a library with a bunch of books in my house. And the one that I felt compelled to have at the ready is this one, Water to Wine, Brian Zahnd. And he traces his second season theological journey.
Okay.
He is a pastor. We actually traveled to Turkey with him for 3 weeks this year.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And, but I could align my faith journey with his in the sense that all of a sudden you're like, you know what? Some of these things don't make sense to me. And whereas in a season in my life, I didn't have time to either sit with the Lord with those or read more or listen to other voices. And now I do. And so I have a bigger picture. In fact, one of the things that I'm doing is I'm leading a Bible study of women that I've known, most of them for over 30 years.
Wow.
We all go to different churches. It's wonderful, but these are all very convicted Christ followers. And really introducing to them some of the writings of some of the great voices that maybe their pastors aren't preaching.
Sure.
So, for example, I'm studying N.T. Wright and his perspective on Paul and the kingdom, and Dallas Willard and Stanley Hauerwas and Walter Brueggemann and all these great theological voices. And I'm distilling them, and I'm teaching this group of women who, for all their years in the church, have never been exposed to it because it's maybe not their pastor's stream.
Sure.
So instead of, I think, just to put a cap on it, we get in a stream, we read the people we read, and now that I have emotional and mental capacity, now I'm in the river.
Yeah.
And there are lots of streams feeding that river.
That's right.
And there are lots of orthodox streams, and some not. Like, I am now listening to people who I disagree with, but I'm learning from them.
Yeah.
So in terms of faith, it really has been, I think the most undertaught aspect of theology in the United States is the kingdom of God. And that's really what I'm focusing on. And it's not anything I'm discovering. It's these great voices out there who have been talking about it for years. But I really think that it's so radical that it's not, a lot of pastors don't preach it because if we really grasp what it means to be a citizen of the kingdom of heaven here on earth right now, we'd all have to act a whole lot different.
Yeah.
And so that's a really try to hit the high points of that big conversation.
Yeah. And, I feel for pastors too, because there is, I mean, they can't teach everything. So there's always some limit to that, just from a time perspective. And there's probably a little fear baked into that. It's a control thing, maybe. It's people may or may not understand this. If they don't, it could cause confusion. I mean, I get where they're coming from, but also there is a point, I think, especially as we get older, where you've got to give people a little bit of credit and also trust them in their journey and the Holy Spirit speaking into their life to say, let's not be afraid of this. Let's lean into it and let's see what God teaches us through the process and expand our thinking, and let's have a conversation about it. Let's have discussion. I think church tends to be a one-way discussion most of the time, from the stage to the people, and there's a place for that. There's, that's part of it, but especially if it's a larger church or a church, it's just hard to have the conversation, and then everybody who might be teaching a Sunday school class or a Bible study or a small group or whatever they call it in their church may not be qualified to lead those discussions. It's complex, but we should lean into it for sure.
Well, that's why this book that I mentioned, he actually does it. He had a mega church very much in the ilk of what you and I have attended.
Yeah.
And the Lord just led him to completely change his perspective on some things. And, there was the natural fallout. But that's why this book is, if anybody on a faith journey in this season of life, I think this book is that perfect thing. In fact, my husband read it and he said to Pastor Brian, the author, he said, "You have saved me 10 years of my life."
Oh, wow.
I can read this book and fast forward to all the work you did in those 10 years.
Sure.
And the loss and the grief and the joy. Thank you, because I'm now linking arms with you, and I didn't have to go through that for 10 years.
Yeah.
And one of the things in this book that he talks about, Mark, is that many of our churches, particularly where we are, the Southern Evangelical Church, while we wouldn't necessarily identify ourselves as fundamentalists, whatever that means, in a sense we are, because we have distilled the gospel down to these essentials that become fundamentals.
Yeah.
And we have neglected the mystery. And so this book talks about how the mystery is the antidote to fundamentalism.
Yeah.
And the idea that we can, no, that's fundamentalism in so many words. I've got these 5 fundamentals, and if you don't check those boxes, if you hadn't said the magic words.
Right.
So my faith journey has probably been to realize how little I know, and how there are things I'm never going to know, and how I can live in that space and live in the mystery of faith, but still hold on to it.
Yeah, that's so good. Let me ask you this. There's a feeling I've had for many years, and I'm a church guy. I grew up, my dad was a pastor, and my whole life has been in the church. My clients are typically in ministry, churches or nonprofits in that space, or a parachurch or whatever, missions organizations. And that doesn't still make me an expert at it, but I'm pretty well versed in, and a lot of my clients are different denominations too. So it's a cool thing. I get to see a lot of different parts of the country and different denominations and how they're working, how God's moving in them. But one thing that I've seen fairly consistently, and I haven't had good words for it, but I'm trying to get to that place. There seems to be, I don't want to overstate this, but there seems to be a drifting or a fallout, or I don't have a good word for it, but people as they get older in a lot of churches tend to be ignored, I think. And that sounds harsh, and I'm not saying it's an intentional thing by church leaders, but there's always a focus on the next generation and on young families, and there should be. That's great. I'm all about it. We have a 14-year-old at home still, so I care very much about the next generation. But part of the reason I'm doing this is I feel like our generation, Gen X or Boomers or wherever you fall on the line, as they get older in church, there just doesn't seem to be as much use for them by people. I don't mean by God, of course, and so they tend to change churches or leave church, or they get way less involved, or they'll just go on Sundays and not do anything else. Like, So I can't prove that. I don't have hard data on it, but I'm hearing more and more people sort of address it. And do you know who John Mark Comer is?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
I've taught his stuff for a long
Yeah,
time.
okay.
Yeah.
Big fan. I'm reading Practicing the Way right now. I'm in the early parts of it. But he was on a podcast, it's probably a year and a half ago or so. Carey Nieuhoff, you know who Carey is? Okay. Love his stuff. For those who don't know, kind of a church leader, a data guy, likes to talk about trends and all this kind of stuff. So he's interviewing John Mark, and they started talking about these seasons of life. Have you heard this talk or heard this?
I haven't.
Okay.
I haven't.
I'll put it in the show notes, and I'll share it with you too. It's one of the best discussions on this topic I've ever heard. So anyway, and I can't remember all the stages, but it's pretty obvious as he goes through them. You're like, yeah. But as people get older, they get into, I think it's about the fourth or fifth stage of this process, and this is from some study he read, somebody else had done. But it's one of those things that just resonates as true. Like you hear it, you're like, yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. I've seen that. But I do think there's a falling out or separation or a decline in involvement. And maybe it's the Western culture thing where we don't value people of age the way maybe they did in older time, years ago, or different cultures. But do you feel that at all? Do you see that at all? Does your friend group talk about it? I'd just love to hear your take on, and again, I'm not blaming any particular church or any group, but I think it is a pretty broad issue that's happening. And I think older people have so much to give still, probably more than ever, but yet they seem to be a little bit discounted. No pastor's ever going to say that, but the actions sort of imply that that's a thing. What are your thoughts on that?
So I would say, again, for me, I personally haven't experienced that, but that's also because I just don't live into any of the narratives that I'm somehow the older generation.
Yeah.
In fact, one of the things I was going to share, and I'm going to get back to answer your question, but this is a great time to introduce it. One of your questions near the end is who's influencing you. Mm-hmm. And, I forget how the question was phrased, but it definitely leads one to like who are you older? And I'm like, again, I reject the assumption. Okay. So, at church, why is there an assumption that I'm doing the things that old people do?
Yep.
Like, I'm intentional. I'm hanging out with the young people. And maybe that's because I see myself as 15 years old.
Sure.
Right. And so, Friday night had the incredible thrill to get to go to a party where one of our young Highlands College professors just earned his PhD. And, Buddy and I, other than his parents, were probably the oldest people there by 20, 25 years.
Yep.
And I'm like, y'all invited me. It's awesome. They're like, well, of course. But my point is, I reject the assumption there are things that old people do. And so that, if you're at a church that doesn't have things that the old people do, well, then you're outside of the loop. Mm-hmm. What are the things old people do? Like, why is there this category of old people things?
Yeah. Well, I need to say though, I'm with you. I agree with that.
Yeah.
But what I think is because that assumption is out there, that I'm not saying older people should do anything. What I'm saying is they still have all the things to offer, if not more, because of age and experience.
Absolutely.
But I think culturally, there doesn't seem to be. Now, yes, we can make our own way and we can figure out our own path. Absolutely. I'm just saying there doesn't seem to be an encouragement of that kind of activity for people who are older. It seems like they're not the focus of the talks. They're not the focus of, and I'm not saying they need to be all the time, but like they seem to never be the focus of a lot of leadership in churches because they're always thinking about what's next, and it's always kind of tends to go younger. So it's more about that. Like, do you feel that culturally at all?
Yeah, I don't. But also because I'm in a new church environment where the sermons aren't about like fixing your life problems. Mm. They are about, the subject of the sermons is no longer I, but it's him, right? Which is not a subject, but he.
Yeah.
And as opposed to let's find what Scripture says about my issue, the preaching focus is let Scripture speak and you hear what the Lord is saying to you.
Regardless of where you're at.
Regardless of where you're at. So the sermons that I'm currently hearing and sitting under aren't to any generation, because they're to all generations, because they're not problem solving, they're Scripture leading.
Okay.
And so, that has been a massive shift for us, because we're not, it just, when you sit in a sermon and I am not the subject, and literally, I mean, both in English and in conceptually, but it's Scripture first, and you hear what the Lord's speaking to you in that moment. Well, that works for a 7-year-old as well as a 97-year-old.
That's good. Yeah.
So then I think it's a question of, and I'm not saying everybody up and leave your churches, because that would be counter to the next thing I'm going to say. But I am saying that we have sat in churches for a very long time, that not you and I specifically, I'm speaking generally.
Yeah.
We have sat in churches for a very long time that have become what I would call an affinity community versus an ethical community. So what's the difference? And I think this gets to the core of my answer. So an ethical community is like a family, okay? We are connected and in healthy spaces, invested and interested in each other. We act different. We think differently. We have different interests. But we are connected as an ethical community. What binds us is a shared ethic. For many people, that's not their family. But you can think of, I hope, an ethical community to which you belong, and family being the initial example, where, politics may differ, churches may differ, food preferences may differ, style preferences may differ, sport team, all these things are different. Doesn't matter. We are bound by a code of ethics.
Yeah.
That is the body of Christ. We should be bound by the code of ethics of the kingdom of God. It doesn't matter if you like loud music or quiet music, contemporary music or old or, traditional.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't matter. Churches have become affinity communities. We're together because we like the same things.
Gotcha.
Okay. So all of a sudden, the things I like aren't happening at my church. Now, me being who I am, I'd be like, okay, well, I'll start it. But I recognize that, or I'm going to go join the young people, right? But I recognize that that's, not what everybody would do. And so my question would be, if you were feeling disenfranchised at your church, are you in an ethical community? Are you in an affinity community? Because if you're in an ethical community, the Lord calls you to make that community better, whatever it is. And, if it's that your pastor is not pastoring people over 40, well, then maybe you need to tell him.
Yeah.
Right? Because in an ethical community, we can speak the truth in love. When we think about an ethical community, all of Paul's instruction in the New Testament, all of a sudden it makes sense, right? Because Paul and the Jewish community would have known nothing of this individualistic faith we have, but they were in an ethical community where they spoke the truth in love. Yeah. Could that be where down through the generations, my father's Turkish, my mother's Italian, we didn't know how not to speak the truth. Most of the time it was in love, but some of the times it might hurt your feelings. Oh, well, right? Yeah. And it's not a get over it, move on. It's there's a bigger thing than what you like.
That's right.
There's a bigger thing than what you prefer. There's a bigger thing than how you feel about it. All of that is important. All of that matters. But it's not just that you are the subject of Sunday or anything else going on in the church. And so I would challenge people to look at their faith community and ask that question. Am I in an ethical community, or if I'm in an affinity community? And if we're just all like the same things, we all have an affinity for the same things, you're not going to get that multi-generational investment because you don't all like the same things, right?
Yeah.
Like, we went through a season, you remember, all of a sudden, like, younger people always, oh, look at this video. Oh, have you seen this video? No, I hadn't seen it. I don't want to see it, right? So if I'm in an affinity community, I walk away from that. If I'm in an ethical community, I'm like, oh, I hadn't seen that. That's interesting, right? So I think it's a big topic, and I've tried to distill it down. And sometimes I'm accused of, oh, you make it sound easy. I've been to this church for 30, 50, 70 years. I understand that. I really do. And I also know that I'm a very passionate, active, forward person. Not everybody's like that. Like, if I see a problem, you're going to have to prevent me from solving it, because what I want to do is solve it. So my lean is to look at the problem and fix it. And unless you stop me, I'm going to do that. Many people are not that way.
Yeah.
But I would want these people who feel disenfranchised to look at their community and say, is this a community I'm called to improve by speaking the truth in love? Meaning, I'm in an ethical community and I have a responsibility. Or am I just in an affinity community and they're starting to do things I don't like?
Yeah.
Then you have to ask that question. But I really think it goes to that, Mark. I just do. I think it's, what type of community are you in?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's definitely not the way I think a lot of people look at it, and that's a really good word for people to think about. You've mentioned a couple times your friend group, and knowing you for several years, I know you've got a group of women that you travel with that you've known since, high school or college. You guys have pictures when you were like 20, and it's so cool to see that. And whenever you post those, I love to go through and go, okay, that's her and that's her. try to match them up. But what role does that play in your life?
One of the things that I did when I stopped working in that job, I began to feel isolated because, yes, I have these friends, but grandchildren, kids, Florida, Seattle. What do we, it's Tuesday at 11:30. What am I doing this afternoon? Kind of thing. And I wouldn't call myself a trendy person, but I needed a new community. And the trend in Birmingham, Alabama, as well as many other places, is Mahjong. I kid you not. So I had a very good friend. She said to me, you need to learn Mahjong. I'm like, that's not my jam. She's like, no, you need to learn Mahjong. You're going to come to my group, you're going to learn, and you're going to make some connections that way. I'm like,
you're talking about the game, right?
The game Mahjong.
With the little tiles?
Yes.
Okay.
So I learned, and all of a sudden, I got to play with all these ladies in my old neighborhood. Going this afternoon. Did I wake up one day and say, oh, I love Mahjong? No. I woke up one day and said, what am I doing this afternoon and next afternoon and the one after that and next week? And I need some people. And so this very wise friend said, you need to learn Mahjong. Well, that's great. That starts rocking and rolling. I live in a new urban type neighborhood. It's that city planning thing and very walkable. And I'm looking out the door and I'm like, what am I doing here? So you know what? I got Mahjong started in my neighborhood. I know. Again, it wasn't like, oh, I love Mahjong. Can I just spread the, Mahjong everywhere? No, it was, I need to find a friend group. I have this stable, long-term friend group. Again, we went, 20 years with just talking to each other, but now we travel together regularly. And we see each other regularly once a year. One of the girls I see a lot, spent Father's Day with her because she's friends who become family. But if you hear this and you're like, oh, that's not me, I don't have that 20 years, I guess I'll never, or actually more, graduated in 1979, somebody do the math, right? And have actually known them since 1976. I can do that math, but won't. And anyhow, the idea of community, it just goes back to that. And my kids all live out of state. And as you know, 2 of my boys are in the military. There have been seasons of my life where we're in 4 different time zones. In fact, today, this is one of those seasons. My immediate family live in 4 different time zones.
Yeah.
And one of them is overseas.
Yeah.
Right. And come this fall, we'll be in 5 different time zones. So my family is not any kind of built-in daily physical community. I've got to find them.
Yeah.
And how, for me, Bible study and mahjong. But, because you do need an affinity community as well as an ethical community.
Yeah.
So I have built an affinity community and seek those out. Knitting, needlepoint, whatever, mahjong. Because then, and I'm going to jump because there's one thing I really, really do want to share, is the value of creativity. I told you that was one of those markers that the Lectio 365, that group has. And we have a creator God. The journey of life is to grow into Christ-likeness, to become a person who most models Christ, so that with each day, I should look more and more like the Lord. Well, God is a creator.
Yeah.
So people say, oh, I'm not creative. Well, and I'm not creative either. I'm actually a technician. I'm going to follow those instructions. I'm not writing the knitting pattern, but I'm going to follow those instructions. And I'm creating something. And I will tell you, I think that's another really important thing. You can create a meal. You can create a note to somebody. It doesn't have to be a masterpiece or a work of art.
Yeah.
Right? But being creative then helps you find an affinity group. And many ethical communities other than church and family start as affinity groups.
Sure.
So that's a long answer to a short question.
No, that's great. And I remember one of the classes we taught at the college was around creativity, Kellen's class. And, he would talk about at the beginning that we are all creative. Mm-hmm. Because even if you're an engineer or an accountant or whatever, there's creativity that goes into all those skills. Like that, we don't think of it as creative or artistic, and probably wouldn't call it artistic. But I like the word producing more. I think when you're producing something yourself, making it, creating it, whatever word, whatever verb you want to use,
right,
you're involved in doing it. Just like this thing for me that we're doing right here. Like this is an outlet for me. I'm not making my living at it. It's fun for me. It's exciting for me. I look forward to every time I get to have one of these conversations. But it's because it checks that box for me. And I have a creative job. I mean, I create for a living, but yet this is a different kind of creating. And so it does. I think purpose kind of flows out of it.
Right.
You feel fulfilled. You feel useful. And typically, the things that we produce, we can share with people. So I think that's helpful as part of it as well.
Absolutely, that's right.
So let's use that as a segue into this last part, and that is, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about purpose specifically, because I remember when we worked together and you were getting ready to leave, and I'm not going to use the R word, but you were getting ready to leave, and you were talking about your next phase. And like everything else in your life, you were very intentional. You were planning. You were dreaming. You were super excited about it. And being friends with you guys and watching socials, and we talk to you every once in a while, we're getting to watch your journey through it. And so, but I just know that one of the key parts of that is you're not just traveling and having fun. You're not just creating community around you, those are all great things and all part of it, like you're saying. But you have a deep-seated calling and purpose, and you had some plans about things you were going to do with that. Just talk about how the role that plays in your life, the energy you get from that, and the output that comes through that. I'd love to hear you talk about that.
Well, I think that we all have the same purpose, every one of us, at the mega meta level.
Yeah.
To love and serve the Lord and to grow in his likeness.
Yeah.
And how each one of us does that is a function of how the Lord created us, right? You can't tell in this, but I'm really short. Mark, you know that, right? So I'm really short. I'm like 5 feet tall on my best day, right? Yeah. And so the Lord did not create me to love and serve him and grow in his likeness by playing basketball.
Yeah.
So how did he create me? Well, he created me with a passion for learning and teaching. And I realized that if I didn't walk that out, if I truncated that part of my life, because of course that's part of what I was doing at Highlands College, if I truncated that, then I would shrivel and die. And I think that we don't have anything other than sin that the Lord doesn't have. But I don't have everything that he does have.
Yeah.
And so if you put together all our personalities, all our abilities, all our interests, that's the Lord. So every one of us, right, is a part of that bigger picture of who God is representing himself to the world. How does God show himself sacrificial love and service? Well, maybe that's what Mother Teresa's job was, right? How does he show justice? Well, maybe that's what Brian Stevenson at Equal Justice and all that. So I had to settle into, well, which part of that is mine? Like, what am I called? How am I called to image the Lord to his world? And justice, I have a huge justice gene coupled with a huge responsibility gene. Like, I feel responsible and I feel a call to seeing justice done in the world. Okay. So then you're like, whoa, okay, well, why aren't you working at Equal Justice Initiative? And I ask myself the same thing. or the Innocence Project, which actually is done out of the law school that I went to. And so I say to people, I don't believe in reincarnation. But I would like to live a few other lives and work at those places. And I have looked. And what they do is far too serious, intense to have anything other than a full-time commitment. Sure. And they're not looking for, what it is that I can offer. So, okay, so now I've got this big thing and I'm like, okay, well, eat justice. Okay, well, Innocence Project, Equal Justice. Okay. And so for me, when I took that funnel and brought it down, what that looked like was joining hands with the ministry out of the church that that was affiliated with the college and going and joining their prison ministry.
Yeah.
And so further that funnel, because the real heroes of this effort are the ladies in that prison ministry that drive 90 minutes each way every Monday, and they serve and love the women at the Julia Tutwiler prison here in Alabama. I come once a month and I do a Bible study there. And I have been working with the women on death row, and it's just, I cannot tell you the life it gives me. Getting the opportunity to image it, and I guess what I'm trying to say is it's like funnel, like to this little thing. Like it's once a month, because just the traveling, and then I have responsibilities. I do have responsibilities with my family and, helping with my grandchildren who live in different states and, schedule. But it is the little space, the little classroom where I get to image God to these women. And I wish I could do it. It gives me such life.
Yeah.
So, again, I always think about people like, well, and you've got it settled. I didn't know. I didn't know. I had to sit and ask the questions. And I had to see also, we used to tell students at the college, oh, what am I called to do? Well, the first thing you're called to do is make your bed because you live in a house with roommates. The second thing you're called to do is keep the refrigerator clean. We sometimes look at calling as some big thing that the Lord's going to hit us over the head with. Well, your calling is right where you are.
Yeah.
So for me, for as much as I would passionately love to be working in either of those two spaces that I mentioned, that's not right here. I would have to leave my husband and my responsibilities to my family and move. And that's not what the Lord is calling me. The Lord has said, you live in Birmingham, Alabama. Yeah. And this church has an amazing prison ministry with incredible access. And you can love and serve the Lord there. And you can grow in Christ likeness as you study my word, to share my word. And then when those women reflect the word back to you, you learn from them. And it gives me life. I mean, it's a very unique space. It's a very unique thing, but we're all unique. So what is the thing? If we look at the funnel from the very big, and then you factor in what zip code are you in? What are your physical or emotional or, calendar limitations? Do you keep your grandchildren 2 or 3 days a week? And that may be it for this season. But I think that the effort that I have to do to get there, to clear an entire day, it's not inconsequential.
Sure.
I'm not the hero. Like I said, there's a group of ladies who've been doing this every day. And they drive every Monday, not every day, every week, every Monday. They drive from all over the state and they serve and love those women. But I get to do that just a little bit. And the life that it brings me, serving your purpose.
I think purpose is a game changer for people, for sure. To whatever extent they can find it.
There's a collection of books called Every Moment Holy.
Okay.
Fabulous. And they are books of written liturgies that for every moment. So in this book, there was a line, and I wanted to share this, and it's kind of a good kind of denouement that, kind of talking us out. We were not made for boredom. We were made for wonder. And when people say they're getting old or they're older, I think what they're actually saying is, I've lost the wonder. This is life. And they look at the graph of life as a declining line. I've lived all this. And again, I reject that assumption. To your point from the beginning, I've got more time. I have more resources. I have more wisdom. I look at life as an increasing line. And the wonder, I'm not made for boredom. I was made for wonder and mystery and what's out there. And sure, I'll try that. Let me go do that. Absolutely. And that doesn't have to be massive international travel. That could be reading somebody you've never read before. I've discovered an author about a month ago, and I'm completely addicted, and she writes about foreign lands, and I'm traveling through those lands. And all that to say, we were not made for boredom. We were made for wonder. And that's the life that I want to live.
What's exciting about talking to you, and no surprise, exactly why I wanted you to come on here, is you're modeling so many good things. You've got your structure, your skeleton, you called it. You're being creative. You've got your purpose. You've got fellowship and relationship with people. You're creating community. You're just doing all the things as I knew you would be. I didn't know all this was happening. I knew some of it, but I didn't know all of it. But I'm not surprised. And I thank you for showing. A lot of people are going to hear this, watch it, I hope, and they're going to be inspired by you to go, I can do that too. I can create that same structure. I can find space in my life to make those things happen, because it really is the difference between a life well lived at any season, but especially in this season, as people are getting older and have opportunity. It is such an opportunity for them to not only impact other people, but have a life that they can be proud of and feel honors God. Well, it's been super fun.
Yes.
We'll do it again at some point, and tell Buddy we said hello, and
I will.
miss seeing you guys on a regular basis. But
I know. Well, like I said, y'all have some blank space in your lives. Give us a call.
Same to you.
All right.
Thank you. We'll talk to you soon. Bye. I don't know about you guys, but I found that interview to be incredibly insightful. I learned so much from her. One of my favorite things that she talked about were the different values, the different pillars that she's applying to her life. And it's such a good framework, a good skeleton to kind of hang things on as you look at your life. Am I doing well in this area? Am I doing well in this area? Here's where I could work a little bit better, do some more. Incredible insights from her. We'll probably have her on again at some point and dive deeper onto some of these subjects. But thank you so much for listening and watching today. And remember that you can find us on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, on other platforms as well. And of course, you can watch the videos on YouTube at our YouTube channel, Age of Lions. So make sure and check us out there. Anywhere you're finding us, we would love it if you like the episode, if you follow us, if you subscribe. You can also go to ageoflions.com and get on our list, our mailing list, so that you'll kind of get early announcements about things that we're working on, have an opportunity to give us feedback, let us know how we can get better, other guest ideas that you might have or thoughts that you're having. We would love to hear from you, because this is not my thing. This is a community thing. We're all about aging with purpose together.